Welcome to A Deep Dive. We're the place you come to, well, really dig into the stuff that matters, finding those aha moments you didn't know were out there. Today, we are diving headfirst into something most of us just use every day without a second thought, our Wi-Fi security. You might think your home network is safe, but today, we're kind of flipping the script. We're looking at how the tools hackers use can actually show you how to build a stronger defense. Now, just to be clear, our mission here isn't about teaching hacking. It's about giving you that hacker's eye view, so you can really bulletproof your own digital space. And our main guide for this journey is the book Wi-Fi Hacking for Beginners by James Wells.
Yeah, and what's really great about this source, I think, is how clearly it just lays out the steps, the actual mechanics of how network vulnerabilities can be exploited. Understanding this stuff isn't just like academic, it's absolutely fundamental if you want to build a defense that actually works. So our goal today is really to demystify some of these pretty complex technical ideas and turn them into insights you can actually use.
Okay, so where do we start? Our journey into these vulnerabilities, it seems, begins not with breaking anything, but with building something. We need to understand how an attacker thinks. So first we have to kind of set up their workshop. The source talks about creating a virtual hacking lab. This involves using specialized operating systems, not your usual Windows or Mac. These are built for network testing, penetration testing. And they come with all the necessary tools pre-installed, right?
Exactly. And that's where virtualization comes in. And understanding why it's used is, well, it's key. Think of it like this. You use a program, something like VirtualBox, to create a totally safe sandbox inside your own computer. So you can run these special OASs like Kali Linux virtually. Doesn't matter if your main machine is Windows, Linux, Mac OS X, you don't install it directly. It's like having a separate computer inside your computer where you can mess around without, breaking anything on your main system. And VirtualBox itself, it's free, open source too, so it's really accessible.
All right, so you grab VirtualBox, and then it sounds almost like you can just download these pre-made virtual systems, like Kali. The source mentions getting these .ova files.
You can download pre-built Kali virtual images, make setup much faster. You just import the file into VirtualBox.
Okay, so you've got it imported. What are the first things you need to tweak inside this virtual space to get it sort of operational?
Well, there's some initial setup. The book mentions allocating enough RAM, making sure your main OS still has enough, maybe 2 gigs minimum for the host and processor cores. But the really critical part is the network setup. You want to use what's called a bridged adapter. Basically, this gives your virtual machine its own direct link onto your network, like it's a separate physical device.
So it can see the network properly.
Precisely. And when you first boot up Kali, you often get default logins. The source mentions root for the username and Tor, that's root backwards for the password. And understanding root is important. It means you have complete control over that virtual system. It's even more powerful than an administrator in Windows.
And right away, even though it's just a test environment, the source stresses basic security, doesn't it?
Absolutely. First thing, update the system. There's a command for that, apt-get update. And then immediately change that default Tor password using the password command. It seems basic, but it reinforces good habits.
Yeah.
Even in a sandbox, don't leave default passwords lying around.
Okay, setup done, basic security handled. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Once an attacker has their lab set up, what's the absolute first thing they need to do to avoid getting caught? How do they start hiding?
Yeah, this is crucial. The source is really clear on this. Hacking without hiding your identity is just asking to get traced. Police can analyze Wi-Fi router logs and find you. So the key concept here is the MNSC address, Media Access Control Address. Every network device, your phone, your laptop, your smart TV, has one built in. It's a unique hardware identifier.
Like a serial number for networking.
Kind of, yeah. It's used at a very basic level for communication. Devices on a network look at the MSA address on beta packets to know if that data is meant for them. So, if you connect this to the bigger picture, your MSA address is like leaving a digital fingerprint everywhere you go on that network. If you don't change it, you're leaving a very obvious trail.
But wait, the source says you don't actually, open up the computer and change the hardware, right? How can you change something that's built in?
Right, that's the surprising part. It's not a hardware mod. When your computer boots up, the MAC address from the hardware gets loaded into the system's memory into RAM. The trick an attacker uses is to change the MAC address that's loaded in memory. So the computer presents a different fake MAC address to the network. It's like changing your license plate temporarily.
Wow, okay. How is that actually done? Are there special tools for this?
Yes. Kali Linux comes with tools specifically for this. The book mentions Machanger. The process involves first taking the wireless interface down temporarily, like shutting off the Wi-Fi card for a second, using a command like ifconfig willen 0 down. Then you use Machanger with an option like random, followed by the interface name, like willen 0. This tells the system to generate and use a completely random MPLAG address. The tool usually shows you the original permanent MMAX and the new temporary one it's now using.
That's actually kind of unsettlingly simple. So an attacker can just appear as a totally different device on the network.
Essentially, yes, for that session, until they change it again or reboot.
So understanding this, it really highlights how someone could mask their presence. But it also means, for us, monitoring network logs for unknown MLE addresses could be a way to spot trouble, right?
Exactly. Seeing unfamiliar MC addresses pop up on your network history could definitely be a red flag. It underscores why knowing who should be on your network is important.
Okay, so the attacker has changed their digital fingerprint. They're anonymous, at least temporarily. What's the next step in trying to get into a Wi-Fi network? I think the book talks about capturing a handshake.
That's right, the handshake. It's the cryptographic exchange that happens when a device connects or reconnects to a secured Wi-Fi network. Capturing this handshake is key because it contains the encrypted information needed to potentially crack the Wi-Fi password later. And interestingly, you don't even need to be physically inside the network's range all the time. Once you have the handshake, you can try to crack it offline.
But to capture that specific data, your wireless card needs to operate differently, doesn't it? This monitor mode thing.
Yes. This answers that important question. If a mass addresses normally filter packets, how do you grab everything? By default, your Wi-Fi card is in managed mode. It only pays attention to data packets specifically addressed to its own MS address. It ignores everything else. But monitor mode changes that completely. It tells the card to switch off the filters and just grab all Wi-Fi packets flying through the air within range, regardless of who they're addressed to.
Like turning your Wi-Fi card into a big net to catch all the data floating by.
Exactly. It becomes a passive listening device. You need this mode to be able to capture traffic between other devices and the access point, including that crucial handshake.
And just to reiterate, the sequence matters, right? You change the MAC first, then you enable monitor mode.
Correct. Anonymity first, then switch to listening mode. Those are the prerequisites before you can even think about capturing handshake data.
Okay, so the attacker is anonymous. They're in monitor mode, listening to everything. How do they zero in on and actually capture that specific handshake for the target network?
Right, so now they need tools to sniff and capture. Kali has tools like the arrow dumping suite. The source outlines basically 2 steps to grab that handshake from a specific target access point, or AP. First, you start arrow dumping listing specifically on the target AP's channel and identifying it by its BSID, that's its unique MAC address. You also tell it to write capture data to a file. The command might look something like arrow dump bankfin channel 6, BSID 11.22.33.44.55.66, write some output file, Alan Zeromon. Ulan Zeromon is often the name of the interface in monitor mode.
So you're listening specifically to that network? And what? Do you just wait?
You can wait for someone to naturally connect or reconnect, or attackers can be more active. They can use another tool, like airplaying, to send special authentication packets to a device that's already connected to the target AP. This basically kicks that device off the network temporarily.
Oh, forcing it to reconnect.
Exactly. When it automatically tries to reconnect, it generates a fresh handshake, which AeroDump is waiting to capture. The command might be like airplaying death 1000, aka APM MEC client max mon 0. The attacking software Kali will usually give a clear message like WPA handshake captured when it successfully grabs it.
Got it. So they've snatched the handshake file, but that file itself isn't the password, right? It's encrypted. How do they get the actual password out of it?
Correct. The handshake file contains the encrypted proof of the password, but not the password itself. Cracking it is the next phase. And this relies heavily on having a good word list. Think of it as a massive dictionary, but instead of words, it's full of potential passwords. Millions, even billions of them. The source actually points to places online where you can download huge word lists compiled from common passwords, previous breaches, and so on.
Places like hackreports.com or crackstation.net.
Yes. Sources like that offer massive lists. Then you use another tool, typically air cracking. You point air cracking at the captured handshake file, that .cap file, and at your chosen word list file. The program then does something quite clever, but also brute force. It takes each password from the word list, combines it with the network's name, the ESED, and runs it through a specific algorithm. PBKDF2, to generate what's called a pairwise master key, PMK. Then it compares this calculated PMK with the information stored in the captured handshake file. If it finds a match, bingo, it's found the password. The command looks something like aircracking handshake-file-01.cap-wt path to wordlist.txt.
And it just churns through the list until it finds a match or runs out of words.
Pretty much. It can take minutes, hours, days, or it might never succeed if the actual password isn't in the word list being used.
Which brings us to the really critical point, the so what? Why is this so dangerous? What can an attacker do once they've cracked that password and are inside the network?
Well, this is where it gets serious. The source is very clear. Once someone is inside your network, they can potentially monitor all unencrypted traffic passing through it. Think about logging into websites that don't use HTTPS properly, or older email protocols. They could potentially capture usernames, passwords, maybe even credit card details if sent insecurely. It really lays bare the danger of having your Wi-Fi compromised. It's not just about someone stealing your bandwidth.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've seen the process. Setting up the lab, hiding the MAC, going into monitor mode,
Yeah.
capturing the handshake, cracking it. It sounds involved, but also maybe worryingly achievable.
No.
So what does this mean for us, the everyday users? How do we take this knowledge and make our own home networks practically unhackable?
Right. Let's talk defense. The first thing the source hammers home is encryption type, WEP. Just no. The book states unequivocally, WEP is old, it's fundamentally flawed in its design, it can be cracked in minutes. It doesn't matter how strong your WEP password is, or even if anyone is connected, the encryption itself is broken. So, rule number 1, absolutely never use WEP. If your router only supports WEP, it's time for a new router.
Okay, WEP is out completely. What about WPA and WPA2? They're much more common now. Are they solid, or do they have hidden weaknesses too?
WPA and WPA2 are vastly better. They're similar protocols, WPA2 being the stronger standard we should all be using, but they do have a potential Achilles heel. WPS stands for Wi-Fi Protected Setup. It's that feature, usually a button on the router or an 8-digit PN, designed to make connecting your devices easier.
Ah, the push button thing, yeah.
Exactly. The problem, as the source highlights, is specifically with the PIN method. That 8-digit PIN can be brute forced. Attackers have tools, like Reaver, that systematically try all possible PIN combinations. And because of a flaw in how the PIN is checked, it often checks the first half and the second half separately, it doesn't take as long as you'd think. The book suggests an average of maybe 10 hours to crack the PIN, and once they have the PIN in, they can recover the actual WPA2 password. So this raises an important point. WPA2 encryption itself is strong, but a convenience feature like WPS can create a significant backdoor.
Wow, so even with WPA2, that WPS feature could totally undermine your security.
It really can. However, if you disable WPS on your router, and you usually can in the router settings, then the only way left to crack your WPA2 network is that dictionary attack using the captured handshake. And that means if your password is strong, complex, and long enough that it's not likely to be in any standard word list, they probably won't be able to crack it.
Okay, so let's boil this down. Based on the source, what are the absolute key takeaways, the non-negotiables for securing your home Wi-Fi?
It really comes down to 3 main things. 1, do not use WEP, ever. Check your router settings now. 2, use WPA2 encryption and pair it with a strong, complex password. That means long think passphrase rather than password using a mix of uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols. Make it random, not dictionary words. 3, go into your router settings and make sure the WPS feature is disabled. Turn it off.
No WP, strong WPA2 password, disabled WPS. That seems manageable.
It is. And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, understanding how these attacks work, seeing the vulnerabilities in WPA, seeing how WPS can be brute forced, understanding the reliance on word lists for WPA2, it allows you to make really informed choices. You're turning that attacker knowledge into your own defense strategy.
What a fascinating deep dive this has been. We started by building a virtual hackers lab, learned about digital anonymity through AMC spoofing, understood monitor mode, saw how handshakes are captured and cracked, and ultimately we landed on concrete steps to secure our own networks. The goal, again, wasn't to make anyone a hacker, but to understand the threat landscape so you can protect yourself effectively.
Exactly. I think the real value here is how practical this knowledge becomes. It takes these seemingly obscure technical details and turns them into clear, actionable steps. Those 3 recommendations, no WEP, strong WPA2 password, WPS off, are simple, but understanding why they're so important makes all the difference. It really drives home their significance.
So here's something to think about. The next time you connect to Wi-Fi, whether it's at home, at a coffee shop, anywhere, just pause for a second. Think about those invisible signals carrying your data. Knowing what you know now, what one small, simple change could you make today? Maybe checking that WPS setting. Maybe finally changing that default router password to make your own digital fortress that much more secure. Definitely something worth exploring.